Hi, this is Petrus du Plessis, and you are listening to the Facecast.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Facecast. And given the jingle that we've just played in there, no big surprise on who our guest is this week. But myself and Barry, we had a chat with Petrus du Plessis from a hotel room on the Gold Coast in Australia following cyclones. It seems to be we're beginning to get a bit of a reputation for this now. You know, Simon Raoului we interviewed in the aftermath of the cyclone, and now Petrus du Plessis. I mean. We're like the hurricane of rugby Fezcast, but yeah. But anyway, Barry's joining me this morning, and so is Matt. How are we, guys?
Pretty good, thanks. A little bit hungover following yesterday's game against Newcastle, but other than that, not too bad.
Yeah, and yourself, Matt?
Big softy. Well, yeah, I'm wondering whether I'm a special guest because it was pretty windy last night as well. So.
Yeah, it seems so. And indeed, it was pretty windy in my house as well. But I mean, less of that, the best, really, because I've dragged myself out of my sickbed to record this morning on New Year's Eve. So first things first, we will say Happy New Year to everybody listening in. And I think, shall we just dive straight into our part one of our interview with Petrus? Because he sat down and talks about his life in rugby with us and, you know, all the outside things he's done and everything and what's happening with him in the future. And we got a little bit of a dig in at Eddie Jones as well, didn't we, Barry?
Yeah, just for a change.
Just for a change. Anyway, let's listen to that then. This is our first part of our brilliant interview with Petrus du Plessis.
A ticky tonga, a ticky tonga, a massa wire, a massa wire, lay lay.
Well, we'd like to welcome our big interview for your first show in 2024. Although we're recording this on the Thursday between Christmas or Bin Day or whatever it is in the UK, but we're recording with someone who's out in Australia at the moment in the aftermath of a cyclone, which we seem to have a record of doing. We did this with Simon Raoului, but an absolute club legend, a cult hero without a shadow of a doubt. One of Saracen supporters' favourite players of all time, I would say, all the way from Australia in the evening over there. We're in the morning over here. But Petrus du Plessis, welcome, Para, to the Fezcast, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for that introduction. It's awesome to be on your podcast. I know I've been getting a lot of links and listening to it, and I know there's other guys like Duncan Taylor and all other friends of mine who's been on, and they've been raving on about it.
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I know we've been trying to get hold of you and wanted you on this show for quite some time because, as I said, you know, your career at Saracens, you were definitely a fan's favourite, weren't you?
I don't know. I just thought I'd just do my job, and you know, I sort of had a very sort of outlandish, mad personality at Saracens because I was allowed to have one. So I really enjoyed my time there because you know, I was always a guy who brought fun and games and brought a lot of energy. So it was great living that lifestyle, and it doesn't always last forever. But I'm still the same person, and you know, I wouldn't say fans' favorite, but I've really enjoyed every minute of my time there, and I've got on really well with a great fan set that's at Saracens.
Absolutely. I mean, Barry, I expect you to agree with this. I can't think of too many other rugby players, any clubs really, have got an IMDb profile as well for acting and, you know, Haribo adverts and all that sort of thing, you know. I mentioned to my bonus stepdaughter who's here with us today, I said, I'm interviewing this guy with Haribo adverts. She went, strawberries, they taste like strawberries.
Yeah, no, Haribo is pretty big in Australia since I've been here the last 3.5 years. So, but no one's picked up on the advert yet.
You're not quite getting mobbed as you walk down the street yet, then?
No, that's the best thing about Australia. I was never mobbed, but even if you are a superstar in Australia, you're pretty chill walking around.
Yeah,
that's good.
Excellent. Well, look, let's go back right to the start because, I mean, looking at your career, you kind of took a little bit of a circuitous route to get into being at Saracens. And, I mean, a lot of clubs you played for, St Helens, Oral, Sedgley Park, and then you joined Saracens and Nottingham. How did that all start for you coming to Saracens back in the day?
Oh, look, I came over when I was barely 20 and I was only going to stay two years, and obviously 2 years became 20 years. And through all that time, you know, I enjoyed my time starting right at the bottom at Liverpool St Helens. Great club, one of the oldest clubs in the world. Went to Oral lost their money, went to Sedgley Park. I think I played about 153 games for Sedgley Park in a 5-6 year spell. And then I did my physio degree whilst I was at Sedgley Park, hence why it was easy for me to go from Salford to Sedgley for training. And then there came a time where there wasn't enough jobs for physios out there. And I had a job, but I didn't have a full-time job. And it came to a crossroad, and I got an agent, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go full-time. And I went to Nottingham, and I was at Nottingham for about 9 months. They changed my body comp, and I was getting fit and, you know, stronger, and I became a better scrummager, learned the hard way in the championship. And then 9 months into it, I got a phone call. We played Exeter. We beat Exeter at home. It was a big win for Nottingham. We were just about to go to this nightclub and celebrate. And I got a phone call from Brendan Fenter, and this was about 8 p.m. And he says, right, we bought you out of your Nottingham contract. You're a Saracens from tomorrow morning at 7. Be there sharp. And that's how it happened. And then I stayed there for another 8 seasons. So that's how I got to Saracens. And there was times, I would probably say, and I'll just throw this in 2005, there was probably a time when I played for Sedgley Park where I said, okay, this is it. I'm not playing rugby anymore. I'm finished. I'm just going to focus on my studies. And I made a full U-turn. So it can be done.
Oh, there's excellence there. And I mean, yeah, you say you had a long career at Saracens. Indeed, you did. I think it's about 158 games. So, you know, a member of the 100 Club, which is a big thing, and a fair few trophies. I mean, when you were at, you know, Oral and Sedgley Park, did you ever think that you would be lifting Premiership trophies and European Cups?
It's quite interesting because I've got the shirts up in my house, and sometimes I just stand and, you know, reminisce in my mind with regards to that first Premiership. And I think there's a time when I came in, Carlos Nieto was injured, and I played quite a bit of rugby, and for Saracens, I think it was about 8 games. We lost that first final when Steve Borthwick was captain. We lost against Leicester in the last minute, as you remember. Hipker scoring under the sticks. And then the following year, we won it. And there came a time leading up to that second Premiership final when we won it, where I said to myself, look, well, what was I then? 29, maybe touching 30. And I was thinking, if I won this trophy, or, you know, leading up, and I never play rugby again, in my mind, I've made it. I've accomplished something that is so big for any rugby player out there, coming from where I came from in national levels. And we won. And actually, not long after, I got a big injury. I was struggling for about 6-7 months with a neck, which is, you know, another story, which is where all the neck strengthening stuff comes from. But I thought, if I have to retire now, I'd retire a happy man. But when I got back, I thought, no, I want more. I want more. I want more. And so did the other guys. And, you know, there might have been 2012, 13, when we were making finals, we weren't winning cups, but then 15, 16, 17, that was massive. And when you look back, you think, wow, I won 5 trophies, and it's like, it just rolled into one, but it was the best time ever.
Well, I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? You've won 5 trophies. There are plenty of players out there of your contemporaries who won't have won a single trophy. So obviously you must feel quite blessed in the way that your career went.
Oh, definitely. And I think when we won that in 2011, when we won that first Premiership, it was such a huge step in the right direction for the club. And, you know, Mark McCall and Brendan and all the assistant coaches were doing a great job. And then we sort of just found our stride again, 2016, and we won the double. And that year in particular was probably one of the club's biggest years. I know they've done it as well again, but that year was really the catalyst to say, this is Saracens. We're one of the best clubs in the world, and that was great to be part of. But look, I probably never carried a ball. I just made my tackles and I made sure that I can maul. But then my main job was scrummaging, and that's all I wanted to do. So that's what I focused on.
Well, indeed. And we're going to split this interview in two parts. And we'll do a little bit of nastiness on the older scrums in part two and get your input on that. But, I mean, the scrummage for Saracens at that time was the rock on which success was built, wasn't it, Barry?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were a dominant pack, and we used to go after teams quite aggressively, and obviously Para was a big part of that. And you did actually score 10 points for Saracens, so I'm reliably informed. So you must have got on the end of a couple of moves there and got a couple of tries.
Yeah, that's actually funny. That was my last home game against Bristol, and I haven't scored. I wanted to be the only player who's played 150 matches and didn't score, because I thought that was quite a unique pub quiz question. And that day especially, I drove in with Jim Hamilton. I sat next to him and I actually got it on video, and I said, Jim, today I'm going to score a couple of tries. And he was laughing. And then every time we had a maul and Jamie George had the ball at the back, I recycled myself in the maul, got back in the maul, and then took the ball off him. And the first time it was funny, and the second time he wasn't happy. So I came away with 10 points. I thought, okay, on my last game, home game, so that was it. And then I scored 10 points. I was happy with that. But yeah, we can talk about the scrum.
Yeah, we'll do that in the second part, Para, if that's okay with you. I love the idea, though, you nicking and tries. I'm a player who's actually tackled my own tight head prop on a tour match in Belgium because he was about to score a try. And we knew that we would spend the next 4 days hearing about it. So I actually tackled him, held him up over the line so he didn't score a try. But no, I mean, so, you know, you've gone through this playing career. You left Saracens in sort of 2017, 2018. Moved off to London Irish, then on to Glasgow Warriors. But at that time, you would develop, I mean, we've already alluded to it. You've got many fingers in many pies, haven't you? You've diversified in what you've done in your career. Coaching was something that you've taken up, though. I mean, how did the coaching side of it come part? Did somebody at one of the clubs say, yeah, you've got the ability to teach, to coach, to instruct, or is it something that you put your hand up and said, look, I really want to do this?
Yeah, no, you're actually 100% correct there, because that's how it happened. I went from Saracens to London Irish, and Brendan Fenter was taking a few players over to London Irish. And it was a tough year because I would say it was a young squad and we didn't do that great. We beat Harlequins twice. I think that was the only wins we had that year, and we got relegated. But not long after preseason, and during preseason, I was, and also at Saracens, I was always mentoring young props and helping them, and being creative in the gym. How can you bring the gym, the scrum into the gym? You know, obviously working close with, you know, back then with Richard Barrington, Vincent Koch, and Mako Ponipola, and we were all helping each other. And then when I went to Irish, I did the same. And there was a small part when I was sort of designated scrum coach when they got relegated. But I think it was about 3 months into that season, that second season at Irish, I got a phone call from Glasgow Warriors, and they needed a prop because Xander Ferguson broke his leg. Anyways, again, same as when I went from Nottingham to Saracens. Next morning, I was up in Glasgow and I started training with them. And obviously, the head coach there was Dave Rennie, who, you know, I've had a very good relationship still to this day with. And I sort of looked at the Glasgow Warriors scrum and I said, okay, I think the props are doing okay, but I think the second rows and back rows are not in sync. So can I spend some time with them? Yeah, spend some time. So in any case, slowly but surely, the scrum started doing better and better and better. And some of these Scotland players are performing better in the scrum. And one day we were away. It might have been in Cardiff, or we were at the Dragons, and we were in a hotel. And Dave Rennie said, "I need to talk to you." So he sat me down and he said, "How do you feel about taking over the scrum from now and then next season?" So that first year, when I transitioned as a player coach, we got to what it is now, the URC. we played in the final against Leinster and we lost 2017. And the following year, I was more of a full-time coach, but I was offering to train with the squad. So it's quite nice, keep fit, train with the squad, get into mauls and brawls, and then coach them as well. And that transition is tough for any scrum coach when you go from player to coach. And then, I remember. Okay, so I was at Glasgow for about a year and a half, and then I think I didn't play for a good 8-9 months. And then Dave Rennie said to me one day, Scotland's not going to let us play any of our tightheads. And this is about almost a year later. So we're talking like sort of January 2020. Can you train for the next 3 months if we play you for one game against Treviso? So I was sort of retired, but then, okay, now I'm training back. And this 2020, we're in Italy. And halftime came and our scrum was under a lot of pressure. And then 5 minutes into the second half, Dave Rennie radioed down and says, okay, Parra, do you want to get on? So I got on and then helped sort the scrum out. We won that game. And that was my last pro game. And I remember that's the one where I wiped my bloody nose on the referee's back. It's Nigel Owen's back. And that was my last game. So then it was a real transition after that. Now, after that game, I knew it was my last game. Dave Rennie said no one's allowed to go out. So I went out to pubs and just celebrated with the staff. And then the very next Tuesday, he tapped me on the shoulder. He says, "Come on, I need to talk to you." So I thought, I'm in pretty deep trouble here because I was the only one who's gone out. I had a few beers and no one was supposed to go out because there was Exeter in the European game the next week. And anyways, he sat me down and he goes, do you want to go to Australia and be the Wallaby scrum coach? And that's how that happened. So everything had a sort of a knock-on effect. And I think with regards to me going to Glasgow and then ending up in Australia for the last 3.5 years, all had a knock-on effect of me making that transition from player to coach.
Well, it's amazing to hear. And I mean, the Australian side of things as well. I mean, you said you've listened to a few Fezcasts. So going back a few years, we used to have a section called Jez Rants, which was normally me having a pop at Eddie Jones because I've never been Eddie Jones's biggest fan. And I mean, and Barry will back me up on that one. But, you've gone to Australia with Dave Rennie. And Australia seemed to be, a sleeping giant, not the side that they were, when you had the likes of George Gregan and Stephen Larkham and Spencer and Mortlock and all those guys running around and everything. But they seem to be going in the right direction. And then Rugby Australia seems to have imploded somewhat, hasn't it, recently? I mean, what's the feelings there on that side of things? How much can you tell us, obviously?
Okay, how much can I? No, well, to be fair, everything is public knowledge at the moment. So let's go back just to the end of 2022. We had that European trip and we played Scotland and we beat Scotland, and then we had France and we got to in about 2-3 points with France when they were at their best as well in Paris. We conceded a try sort of in the last 3.5 minutes, I think it was, and then obviously Italy was next, and we all made a decision and said, look, it's been a long season. I think we're on our 12th or 13th game. We're gonna play Italy and swap guys out. So we probably made 8 to 10 changes, but guys who can fulfill that role played Italy, tough game. And I suppose we just missed the conversion for the win in the 81st minute and we lost that. So the press jumps on that. And then after that, we played Ireland. And the Irish game was, we were mauling to score in the last minute for the win. And our number 9 joins the maul from the side. And they pulled it back, looked on the screen, and that was the end of the game. So we would have beat Ireland in Dublin. And then the following week was Wales. We had a poor start, 17 points behind, but one of the biggest comebacks for the Wallabies against Wales in Cardiff, which is, a difficult place to. So a solid performance, solid training, solid coaching, solid feel to the squad going into the World Cup. And we ended the tour there, but I suppose members of the board might not have been happy. And then January, we had the Wallabies camp and we did the full camp and everybody's happy. We had our plan for the World Cup and the squad was tight. Everybody was happy. The culture was unbelievable. And then obviously the axe fell, and as you know, Dave Rennie was told, to move on, and Eddie Jones was going to come in. I had a meeting with Eddie Jones, and I sort of, we had a good chat, and I decided, for my own reasons, I wasn't going to carry on with the Wallabies. I stuck with Dave. I didn't know if my personality would have fit working with Eddie or not, but I made the decision not to carry on. And they got different coaches in, some good coaches, especially around the forwards. But that was my end of my Wallabies sort of career, and I made that decision myself to resign. And it was actually heartbreaking to see all the players who I've spent so many days and months and years with go through that. And I felt quite sorry for them. I've spoken to a lot of them, and they were all still slightly confused why Rugby Australia made that choice. And now the writing's on the wall. Eddie's moved on, and Hamish McLennan, probably the person who's made the biggest decisions on the day, is also not there. So it's very difficult to comment sort of what the reason is for not having as much success. But I still think, and I agree with all the newspapers, that maybe there should have been a few more older heads, and who could have led a lot more, even though if they didn't play, just some guys who showed some leadership and take that forward. But now it's time to regroup for them. So they're looking for a coach, and I'm sure they'll find a good coach and they'll rebuild from there.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm sure Barry would agree with me. Michael Hooper not going to the World Cup, I still can't work that one out. Can you, Barry?
No, I mean, I was just going to pick up on something that you said there. I mean, certainly from his time in England, it became clear towards the end that Eddie Jones was going through assistant coaches and defence coaches and attack coaches and scrum coaches and everything else at a rate of knots. So they're obviously he needs a certain type of personality around him, and obviously it's a shame that it seems to work that way. But it just looked like, from this side, as a rugby fan, we want a strong Australia because they're one of the traditional powerhouse nations, and it was such a shame to watch from a distance what was going on around their World Cup. And I mean, we all saw the clips of the press conferences over there with Eddie in his hat at the airport and all sorts of things, and denying having spoken to Japan and everything else. But it just looks such a mess. What's the general feeling around it over there at the moment with the Aussies, Para?
Are you talking about Eddie going to Japan?
No, I mean the state of the game over there in general. I mean, are fans quite down on it, or are they hopeful for the future? Or
no, definitely hopeful for the future. I think the main thing is they kept blasting out in the media to say, "Oh, grassroots needs to change and the system needs to change." I speak to a lot of community coaches on the ground level, and they say what they're doing is fine. The kids are playing rugby. You've got hundreds of thousands of kids playing rugby, and their development, there is a pathway for them, and they always want to chop and change things. For me, it's more around make sure that you develop those youngsters and keep them. Because one thing in Australia that I've noticed is you got basketball, so they take all the 6'8" guys. AFL take so many of the potential rugby players who's tall, fit, strong. Then you've got the NRL, which is rugby league, and then you've got cricket and soccer. So there's so many sports that rugby has to compete with, and that makes it difficult in itself. So yes, there should be ways to attract people to, or parents attract their kids to rugby, but I think sometimes maybe it's top heavy as well. I know the Super Rugby clubs will now start talking to the Rugby Australia, and they'll probably sort of connect the dots there to be more in sync. But we've always, as coaches, had to communicate well with the Super Rugby, and I felt we did that. But it will get better, because you've got the British and Irish Lions coming in 25. You've got World Cup in 27, and then from there on, the female World Cup is also going to come to Australia. So there's a lot of rugby to be played and a lot of good rugby. So they will rebuild with a good coach. I couldn't tell you who it is. I've got no idea. They're doing interviews now, but I'm sure with the talent that they've got, I mean, you've got some of the best props in the world almost in Australia. Will Skelton is from Saracens. He's a world beater. You've got back rowers coming through now. Guys like Nick White who played in the Premiership. They've got experience at scrum half. Craig Cooper has got so much experience at 10. Wingers, Marika Kurabetti, to name a few. There's so many talent in the backline as well. So they can only get better.
Oh, absolutely. Now, back to yourself, Para. You've done scrum coaching, the scrum, forwards coach. Do you want to develop your coaching career? I mean, would a head coach job at any point be in your sort of like viewpoint for the next few years?
Look, I think if we can say this in the most humble way, you got to earn your stripes. You got to go through a process. With the Wallabies, with Dan McKellar, I've always helped out with doing opposition lineouts and coaching lineouts to the non-playing squad, and that helped me a lot just to learn the dark arts there on top of scrums as well. And obviously, as you know, I've just done 4 months at Leicester Tigers. Should I say that out loud? But anyways, and it was unbelievable because I think Leicester Tigers is got so many quality players, and at Leicester, partly at Wallabies and Leicester under Dave Rennie and Dan McKellar, I was able to have an input in other areas. I could teach the forwards the most effective way to set up a long ruck. Where do they go after this? So what is the system? Help the defense coach with defense around the ruck, actually running after props on the pitch as they do 15v15 to actually guide them and help them and share my knowledge and experience there, and always chip in when I see something that could be done better. Stuff I've picked up at all the clubs I've been at, and other coaches who I've learned from, because I've spent a few weeks now at Kobe in Japan, and you had the Chiefs coaches come through, you had some of the All Blacks coaches come through, and you sit with them all day and you talk just tactics, and I share my knowledge around what I've seen and what they've seen, and we sort of compare notes, and you just learn from so many international, well-renowned coaches that I'm sort of taking that step into other areas. I will stay in my lane when it comes to scrum, but coaching in other areas, and that will only make you grow into becoming a forwards coach, becoming a head coach eventually, and then obviously your people management skills will be the last cherry on the cake, I suppose.
Well, I suppose, and I mean, we'll bring it back to Saracens now. How important for you as a coach was working at an environment where I don't think there's any other club in the country at the moment that has produced quite so many coaches. I mean, you got Steve Borthwick and Andy Farrell, both coaching international level. Alex Sanderson, Richard Wigglesworth. You've got Kelly Brown, who's doing coaching. Owen Farrell is up. We've been saying it for a long time. He's a coach on the field now. He's going to be a coach in the future. There's no two ways about that. Was that Saracen, right from the start of you joining Saracens, is that something that they do to make you a better player in making you all think about the coaching side of the game? Because that's the impression that we get.
Yeah, I think the system we had at Saracens, and I've seen that now at the Wallabies and even at Leicester when I was there, and at Kobe, or even Glasgow Warriors, I can name them all. They had a very good system every week where coaches had to perform certain roles, and once that becomes ingrained into the players, they almost get that as a player as well. You take that knowledge forward so that when you get to a week, and if you step out of the player's boots and then into a coaching shoes, then you know how the week should flow. when do you do your presentation? How do you prepare for this? How do you cut clips? How do you sit down, do one-on-ones? And that's a lot of the aspects that I've learned from even starting at Saracens, that I probably, unbeknownst to me, started, that coaching development. And by the time I actually had to do it, I go, oh yeah, okay, well, at Saracens on a Tuesday, this is the meeting we did, front row meeting, and then going into your forwards meeting, out on the pitch. What is the key 3 things you need to do? Have you done it? Review afterwards, and sit down with the players and catch up with them before the Thursday session, and then into the Friday, and then, the Saturday they sort of want to lead themselves. So there's a system where you can be spoon feeding them maybe on a Monday, Tuesday they do it, Thursday you felt correct, Friday any issues, Saturday, right, now you go and do it. And that's a coaching philosophy that I think you learn as a player. And that's why, we had Richard Wigglesworth coming to the Wallabies when we were there. And now he's sitting next to Steve Borthwick at England. And obviously Andy Farrell is, an unbelievable coach. He was an unbelievable coach, even at Sarries, and he's done very, very well for Ireland for this last 2 years. So there's definitely, the way they do stuff at Saracens is definitely breeding coaches.
Excellent. We're going to finish this part 1 and take it back to right at the start where we talked about you having fingers in pies and various different things like that. Is that side of your life gone now? The acting, the writing, the weird characters in their underpants and all of that sort of thing? Is that all over? I mean, where is Borislav all right? I mean, that's the question.
I get the odd message from old friends and coaches, and they go, "Can you just send us that Borislav clip again? Just want to show my mates." I was like, "Mate, I'm not doing that. You can't find it anywhere online, hopefully." So there's obviously there's still people that talk about it. And look at social media now. I reckon if I carried on with it, I'd probably be a multimillionaire by now. But that's not, obviously didn't happen. Because look at all the daft things people do on social media now. There's no shame whatsoever. So I think I was probably the trendsetter for that back in 2015, 16. But anyways, so I was listening on the radio here in the Gold Coast in Australia, unbelievable place, beautiful. And on the radio, they said, if you're an aspiring actor, why don't you sign up with an agency? Because Hollywood is bringing all their movies to the Gold Coast. And I was going, oh, and it made me think, but I was like, nah, too old, too fat, too ugly. So I wouldn't bother now. But it was great doing extra work back in the day. It was all part of the fun, all part of exploring, your personality, etc. But so all that's gone. So I'll probably go back to my roots now. I'll probably start a physio job soon. Here in Australia, I registered. I did my exams. It was quite tough, but I got through it, and I'm registered here now, so I can do some work and do some private, do some community physio. So I think, and then the coaching, we'll see where the coaching takes me. I'm quite busy with, working with a team in Japan, and I quite enjoy that. So, yeah.
Well, we've had Irish, English, Scottish, Welsh, and Australian James Bonds. That's up there for your Para, if that ever comes. We'll send him your way. But let's end this bit here. We're going to have a break from this, and we'll be chatting about the game against Falcons that's yet to be played, but will have been played by the time this goes out. We get confused very easy over here. And then we'll come back for part 2 and have a chat about the scrum, Para.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
You're listening to the Fezcast, which is proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association, and I'm Alison Davis, one of the SSA committee. For a £10 annual subscription, the SSA provides our members with monthly newsletters, virtual and in-person player events, away match ticket allocations, and we organise pre-match gatherings at away matches. We sponsor men's and women's players, and we support the Saracens Foundation Track Club on behalf of our members. On top of all that, every year we have a seasonal SSA badge, which is exclusive to members. Where else can you get that much value for a tenner? Join now at membermojo.co.uk/SSA, or come and see us on match day in the Oasis at the StoneX.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, yeah, brilliant first part of an interview there with Petrus. I mean, he is a character and a half, isn't he, Matt?
He is, yeah. Definitely one of my favourites in his time at Saracens, and I was there for his last game, and there was a very big thing made of the fact that he'd never scored a try for Saracens during that time. And then, of course, for his last game, he suddenly appeared at the back of every single maul that we had in the game and managed to bag a double of tries. So. Yeah, there's obviously a bit of a game plan in there with him, and fantastic bloke, and a very experienced scrummager and scrum coach as well. Some of his social media content with scrums is definitely worth watching. He's taught me a few things anyway.
Well, indeed, and we talk about that in our second part of our interview with him, where we asked him to go into the dark arts of the scrummage, and that's coming up in the towards the end of the show, and it is absolutely intriguing. But talking to the scrums, we've got to talk about the game yesterday, and I think the week before when we went up to Salem, we were penalised off the pitch. At scrum time, Alec Clary in particular was getting all sorts of trouble. Yesterday, we played Newcastle Falcons, and as I said on the WhatsApp group, another day, another ref, and that's exactly what happened yesterday. The things that we were getting pinged for in the scrum against Sale, we were getting the benefit against Falcons. So there was a couple of times where I felt that the Falcons' idea of going into the scrum was just to hook the ball back and then collapse it and not worry about going forward, just get that ball out, which they got away with a little bit. But then that swapped over, I think, when Jamie George came on and had a word. But yeah, the scrums, the inconsistency from one week to the other, Barry.
Yeah, it was bizarre. I mean, watching live, there was a couple where you thought, oh, well, this is going to result in a penalty against us. And all of a sudden we were getting the penalty. And it just seemed, I don't know. I mean, obviously we see it from a different angle to the referee and from a lot further away. But it did seem a little bit of a lottery as to who was getting the decisions at scrum time yesterday.
I can probably shed some light on one of them that may well have been directly in front of you, actually, Barry, because I had the ref link in, and there was definitely one in the first half where the referee looked to be giving Newcastle the penalty and suddenly put his other arm out and gave it to Saracens. And I don't know whether it came across on the telly, to be honest, Jez, but the ref got a shout from his AR from the side that the referee's seen. He's seen the scrum collapse on one side, and it looks like Saracens just bringing it down, which, sitting behind it looked like that as well. But he's got a shout from the AR saying green, 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 and the tighthead has just taken a knee very slightly just beforehand, which is what's caused Saracens to collapse. And the referee can't see it because he's on the other side of the scrum. So he's about to give Newcastle the penalty, and he's got the call from the AR saying, no, you've got to go the other way, which is absolutely what they're there for. So it did look a little bit confusing, to be honest, but actually it does show the benefit of that communication. And I do agree that some of them were, they did seem a little bit hit and miss, to be honest, but every time something was given, it was very clearly explained, and it was very nuanced and very slight with every penalty that he was giving. But to be fair, there were quite a few of them that did collapse, and he just said, no, ball's out, get on with it. So, to be honest, I think it was actually refereed quite well. Although we might not agree with some of them, at least it was clear.
Yeah, I mean, Christian Day on comms on TNT did pull out that one from the Falcons tighthead dropping the knee and pointed out it's exactly the same as the one that Ellis Gedge got pinged for in the semi-final against South Africa in the World Cup. Exactly the same reasoning. And yeah, obviously, you know, that's a consistency, which is great. Next up, I mean, before we came on air to record here, me and Barry had a quick chat, and I said, you know, from the television, the conditions looked absolutely abysmal. Barry was saying when you know, where you sit, obviously in the posh seats, you know, it wasn't so bad. But I mean, yeah, that ball, when that got above the north and south stands, I mean, it was doing all sorts of things. You really felt for the guys kicking the ball.
It was very strange, to be honest. It wasn't particularly noticeable from the pleb seats that I sit in until the second half when it started raining and you can see it was horizontal. I think it was one of those strange days where most of the wind was sort of 20 metres above the pitch. It was pretty calm on the pitch, but yeah, as soon as the ball went up in the air, it seemed to swirl around quite a bit. And to be fair, everyone dealt with it pretty well. There's been worse games at the Stonex. I mean, there's never a clear and lovely day with no wind whatsoever there, but it was probably quite challenging for some of them without us actually realising too much.
Yeah, I mean, Barry, I mean, let's pick out one player I felt who did very, very well in that situation with his clever kicks. In particular, was Elliot Daly playing outside centre. I thought the way that he recognised how the game was going and kept his kicks low, bulleted through into gaps. It was with Owen Farrell not playing, and we'll talk about Manu Vunipola in a minute because I don't think he had a bad game either, but. He doesn't give you the same control that Owen Farrell has and the same reading of what the wind conditions are. Elliot Daly stepped up into that role nicely and, really did work out, particularly second half. Let's just turn them around and put the kicks in low and hard and get line outs, which were a bit of a lottery as well. It had an exceptionally good game, Barry.
Yeah, it was great. Obviously, he's a class actor. We know that. It was great to see him back. But yeah, he did have a very, very good game, and his versatility is just so handy because he can play outside centre, he can play on the wing, he can play at fullback, and he can give you that little bit of kicking nous and game management that you need, particularly if Owen's not going to be there for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, I look at him and I sometimes wonder whether he could actually, if he really needed to, step into the 10 shirt as well, because he has got those all-round skills, Matt.
He has, yeah. There was one moment, very brief, that we actually thought, because we thought Alex Good was coming off, and then Manu started to look a little bit leggy. We thought, okay, what's going to have to happen here? Because we actually haven't got any backs on the bench, having a 6-2 split. Parton had already come on and Simpson had come on. I think, right, okay, what's going to happen here? Who's going to go to 10? Who's going to do what? Didn't happen. But, Elliot Daly, very good comeback. I mean, he perhaps wasn't as physical as he can be, but it was his first game back from injury. At the end of the day, it was a bit of a training run for a couple of players. But, yeah, I think especially with Alex Lazowski out as well, we're really going to be relying on Daly certainly in that 13 shirt. Take a little bit of pressure off of Ollie Hartley as well, who's having to play quite a lot, and Nick Tompkins finally getting a rest is pretty handy. But yeah, it's a very good day for Daly as well. I mean, there's plenty of other players that we can pick out, and I'm sure you're going to in a second. But certainly across the backs, it was a good day for some.
Yeah, I mean, that's the interesting thing, isn't it? The fact of the matter is that we put in a pretty good performance. Not perfect performance, not a performance that perhaps the coaches would look at and say, is it a huge improvement, but enough of an improvement? Done so with 3 key players not playing the entire game, Maro Itoje, Owen Farrell and Nick Tompkins. I think the team actually did really, really well. It took them a little while. I mean, that first kickoff where that all went to whatever and ended up in a penalty for Newcastle was you started thinking, oh my God, is it going to be one of those days? But then, yeah, Theo McFarlane ran the line out well, I felt. Andy Christie was, his normal self, playing at 8, which is an interesting one, keeping Billy Vunipola on the bench. And then, indeed, as well, bringing Ben Earl on at half-time and moving him to number 8 ahead of Billy Vunipola. It did seem a little bit weird while you had Billy on the bench there, where you might have wanted another back, but it seemed to work and everything for him. But yeah, I mean, the players that stepped up and had to step up did all right, didn't they, Barry?
Yeah, I do. Another decent game from Ollie Hartley, who looks like he's always been playing in the Premiership. He's not been around that long in terms of experience, but he doesn't look out of place at all. And as you say, across the forwards and the backs, I thought we had a pretty good game, and it was obviously great to see Ben Earl back again, and another one who just doesn't seem to miss a beat. However long he's been out for, he just comes on and plays the Ben Earl way. And he was. I did have to laugh when the ref. I think the referee apologised to him for the penalty try, because that would have been his otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and he came on to replace a man who put 80 minutes rugby into 40 minutes, didn't he? I mean, he's here, he's there, he's every effing where. JMG. There you go. There's a new chant. Juan Martin Gonzalez. I mean, he just. How many Juan Martin Gonzalez's were there on the pitch?
Well, just the one.
I mean, it takes me back many years, and I'm going to pay Juan Martin a huge compliment here. I remember going to a fans forum at Watford Vicarage Road many years ago when Buck Shelford was the coach of Saracens, and somebody asked him and said, what do you need to make Saracens into a title-winning side? And he said, another 14 Richard Hills. And you get that impression with Juan Martin that he is so important that if you could clone him, he could play hooker, second row, standoff, fullback, you name it. He could play anywhere.
He's a very, very good young player, yeah. And I think whatever we do to sign him next season, I'm all for, really. He's been fantastic. I mean, there's a couple of us that keep joking, mainly because of your love for Theo McFarland, but we do keep joking now that Theo McFarland is wearing Juan Martin Gonzalez's pyjamas. But it's fantastic, and he's putting in a serious shift in both defence and attack, and he's pretty understated about it as well. It's that what he's doing isn't particularly flash. It is just bulldozing, really.
Yeah.
And you don't look at him and think he's a presence, but he does the way he just gets about the pitch. It's absolutely fantastic. So yeah, let's sign him up for as long as we can, shall we?
Indeed, absolutely, 100% there. I agree with you on that one. Now, last player I want to mention, because I mean, we could go for all of them, but the lad who got man of the match from Christian Day on TNT was Rotimi Shegan, and it was wonderful to see Rotimi back. But also, like Ben Earl deserved a try, Rotimi deserved a try. That would have been the only thing to complete his game. But he chased high balls, he made tackles, he got turnovers. He created yards in open space. He brought other players in. He had a pretty damn complete game. And another player, Barry, who hasn't been around for a little while. Again, he's been out of the team, presumably injured, and has now come back. And he took his chance with both hands yesterday, I felt.
Yeah, absolutely. He's had two seasons of injury interruptions, and you've got to feel for him, and I hope he can stay injury free and get a bit of a run in the side. I mean, obviously there is quite some competition for the wingers, the two wingers slots. We have got some very good wingers and some very, very experienced international players at that level. But yeah, another great game for him. He could have done with a try. Hats off to the Newcastle player who chased him down from behind though in that second half, because there's not many people who catch Rossi once he gets going.
Well, absolutely not. He is rapid, and unfortunately, he wasn't chasing Adam Radwan back for their first try. I think he might have given him a bit more of a race than Luca on the other wing, but he got to. I mean, that was Newcastle, wasn't it? They lived on scraps actually, and they got a couple of results from scraps, but didn't really pressure us. Just want to quickly mention as well the champagne moment of the game, though, and that was Manu Villapola's Tongan sidestep late on in the second half, where I think the young Newcastle winger is probably feeling pretty much the same as I do this morning, hit by a steam train, and he's a fly half.
It was a good role. Manu, I mean, I said on our WhatsApp that Manu was frustrating me a little bit, and I most of the reason for that is he seemed to take the ball static and stand still, which is actually something that Owen Farrell does quite a lot, but he's reading the game along with it, and Manu just seems to be a little bit indecisive, but that sort of changed in the second half, and I'm sure he got a bit of a boot from someone saying, look, you've actually got some skill, use it, because then the long passes came out, the kicks through came out, and he had a much better second half than first half, in my opinion. Yeah, he's like you say, the Tongan sidestep, that was a thing of beauty. But I mean, for Newcastle themselves, social media is a cesspit. We should stop looking at it. Really, there was a lot of people saying that we should have blown Newcastle away. Really, but you've got to give them credit. Their defence was pretty fantastic, really. I think Guy Pepper he made 33 tackles in the game, and looked like he still had energy after 80 minutes. I don't think we were at our clinical best. I mean, we were in there 22 for a lot of the game, but a lot of that was down to the fact that they were defending really well. And Newcastle across the season, they haven't won a single match, of course, but they've lost so many of those games by a score and 10 points. So it's not like they're London Welsh. It's just not working for them yet. But I don't know where it's going to go for them. But yeah, they were pretty decent, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, let's take a break there and play in our second part of our Petrus du Plessis interview, where he goes into the world of the dark arts of the scrum, and then we'll come back with a brief wrap up, talk about what's coming up for Saracens next week and the position in the league at the moment.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hi, Alex Osterbury here, Director of Rugby for Saracens Women. You're listening to the Saracens Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.
We're back here with Para in Australia on the Gold Coast in the aftermath of a cyclone. So, Para, you're sat in a hotel room at the moment, aren't you? Because you can't go home, which is a bit weird, really.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I call it a cyclone. It's other people call it a cyclone as well. It was an enormous storm. Everywhere you drive, trees just fell over and cars have been hit and roofs just caved in. We were quite lucky. I'm sort of on the edge of the mountain, so we got a brunt of it, but there was no damage. The only thing is that it's 41, 42 degrees every day. There's no aircon, there's no electricity, there's no phone signal. It's unbearable. So most people just, luckily we had insurance and we can go into a hotel just to hide out for a couple of days. So I think the electricity is coming back on the 31st or the 1st. So it's actually quite interesting to see how much you are dependent on electricity. So that's a big eye-opener.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm sure everybody over here in Britain is really unhappy that you're suffering in 40 degrees heaters. We've had Storm Gerrit over here. I know we've had a storm because I had to go and get my dustbins this morning from a different county. But yeah,
Right.
For this part two, we wanted to have a chat with you about the dark arts of the scrum, being as you were one of the best scrummages that we've seen in a Saracens shirt and potentially one of the best scrummages around. But in recent weeks, the scrum has been a point of issue, hasn't it, Barry? And, we've got a lot of injuries. Marco Riccioni's out. Aroni Mawi's out. We're relying on some of the squad players. I mean, Alec Clary has stepped up and has played every game for Saracens this year. But the game before the week before Christmas against Sale Sharks, I mean, we got absolutely bluted in the scrum by the referee presenting seeing what he wanted to see, Barry.
It was a tricky game for us, and as you say, we have had those issues around this season, and I'm wondering how much of that is not down to the individuals, but actually the fact that they can't get the regularity of practicing as a team, as a tight five, because 1 week it's a different player to the next week, and there's just no continuity, and I think that probably plays a big part in it.
Yeah. So Para, I mean, what would your advice be in that situation to the Saracens pack? I mean, how do you think they need to improve there?
I saw a fair bit of it, but look, when I was at Leicester, we played Sale twice, in the Premiership Cup and in the Premiership, and we felt that they are a good team because when we played them, Shonett and McIntyre were solid. I felt they had constant pressure on you, and if there's a crack in your armory, they would explode and go over the top of you. So we've fought fire with fire, and look, I think it's hard for me to it's hard for me to say what teams should do when they've got a lot of injuries. But one thing I do know is, when I was with the Wallabies, we played our first game against Scotland in 2021. We lost both tight heads in a space of 10, 12 minutes, and we had to do the rest of the campaign without our best tight head. So it is a difficult situation to be in, but it's probably training really clever, not overtraining those individuals, and making sure they get the right messages. And for me, on top of, I'm not speaking on behalf of Saracens or any other team that needs to up their scrums, but the scrum is an 8-man, contest, and maybe focusing on the back five more during certain weeks will definitely change that mentality in the scrum, especially if you come up against a good scrum. So there's a lot of detail, and we can go into a bit of it, but obviously I know Saracens always had good mentality going into a scrum. They see their set pieces as a huge weapon, but it needs to be eight guys working together. So that's my first thing. Have a look and see, can you focus on what your second row is, what your back row is doing, and how can we make them even better to help these front rowers?
On that question, I'm going to ask you from your playing side, Parrot, because I mean, I may have mentioned this on the first cast before. I played back row, primarily number 8. But I mean, you as a tight head prop, name me a second row and a back row player that you always felt 100% supported by. I mean, if you could pick 2 players, one second row and one flanker that you wanted behind you, giving you the shove, who would you have taken from your playing career?
Oh, if we talk Saracens, I mean, I would split the lock. I would say Maurice Botha and Jim Hamilton. They can scrum till the cows come home at lock. So as a tight head lock, they can get low. They can keep you locked in, and when you go forward, they can help you smash through the opposition. Those 2 guys for me at Saracens always scrum unbelievably well. And then, as a back rower, I'll probably go with someone like Jacques Berger. He would give 100% in the scrum every time. I mean, there's a lot of back rows at Saracens that did the same. But Jacques Berger, obviously, he made sure that he gave everything in the scrum before he broke off and cut someone in half. So those are there's many more to mention. But I was fortunate, even guys like George Crew and I played with 5 British Lions in our pack at the time: Jamie George, Mako, Billy Vanapola, George Crew, and help me out, who was the back rower?
Kelly Brown or Will Fraser. I'll try.
Oh, sorry, Mario Itoje. There we go. Yeah. So I had 5. So those guys obviously went out and scrum like they wanted to scrum, and therefore the set piece was pretty good. So so I'll mention them again. So when I was playing, there was 5 British Lions in my team. So it was Jamie, George, Vanapola, George Crew, Mario Itoje, and Billy Vanapola. So those guys always gave everything in the scrum. So that's why we were dominant. And then throw Jim Hamilton and guys like Ern Chabert and Jacques Berger in there. So unformidable pack, I thought.
Absolutely. Now, I suppose the onward question from that is, Saracens over the last couple of seasons have developed their play and developed their attack side of things. So perhaps the scrum has become less of a weapon, whereas you want back row players. You look at our back rows now with the likes of Ben Earl, Juan Martin Gonzalez, Tom Willis, who are perhaps more explosive around the pitch as opposed to in the pack. I suppose there's a fine line that you perhaps haven't got that Jim Hamilton, Mo Botha type of, sheer scrummaging second row anymore. Does that then mean that you just got to have your props who are going to just say, we're just going to stay in the battle and do our absolute best here?
Yeah, I think, look, Saracens has always prepared their players really well and would have got that message to them. But I can't talk for what Saracens and other clubs are doing at, before their sort of set piece sessions. But what I can say is, I'm always a massive advocate, and you've probably seen on my social media, a lot of it is how to bring the scrum into the gym. Be creative to make it functional in the gym. Target those weaknesses that you have, whether it's neck strengthening, ankle strengthening, core. leg strengthening. I've put a lot of things and trial and tested a lot of things, and I know there's from that I've got a list of things that definitely work, and I've put it in place in certain teams that I've coached, and I know it does work. So can your players who might be struggling in the scrum, do they just go through the week and say, okay, I'm going to train hard and make my tackles, and I'm going to, run fast, and I'm going to be, run for long periods? Or I'm actually going to scale it back and say, okay, on top of that, I'm going to spend an extra half an hour a week in the gym, making sure that my dark arts is in the right place. And it might take 6 weeks to develop it, working on a certain area of your body. You look at Saracens, they play on 4G, and you need strong ankles, strong foot toe flexors. You need to work on that. Neck strengthening, core, technical stuff. So I normally call it tech strength, which is your technical work, and then obviously your scrum strength. So those are the missing parts that players need to do in their own time. Because I'm telling you now, a Type 5 player can't train like a back all the time. You're going to have to go off and do certain exercises and individual work-ons for you to improve your game. And I think whether they're doing that or not, or whether other teams, I know for a fact, there's a lot of teams who don't do it. And when you explain that to them, they go, okay, right, that's what we're going to install, and it actually makes a difference.
The next question I got then, that comes off the back of that, is an interesting one. And I mean, over here, traditional in our house over the Christmas week is watching World's Strongest Man on the telly. And you see the likes of Tom Stoltman, who is an absolute beast of a man. 6'10" and 30 stone. I mean, would it be easier for you as a coach and a strength coach as well as a technical coach to teach someone who's got the bulk and the strength, the technique to be, or would it be easier to take someone who's got the technique and then build the strength into them?
That's a good question. Which one comes first, the chicken or the egg? I suppose you need both. But if someone's really technically sound, but just needs that strength, it's going to be easier to probably grow that strength, in my point of view, because I've had players coming through props, international props, who are unbelievably strong. Like, they would shift any weight you put in front of them under a bar. But when you put them horizontal, and it's about balancing, foot placement, being smart around where the pressure's coming from, scrumming into the pressure, scrumming away from the pressure, thinking for yourself, that technical aspect of it, they tend to struggle with. So I would, in my view, I would probably say if someone is at about 75% strength, but they're technically sound and they know what they're doing, then I would just say, right, you spend time with me in the gym, and I'm going to take you away from doing all these hop, skips, and jumps, and I'm going to make you strong as I can. And I actually done that with a few players, and guys were shifting 300 to 400 kilograms squatting when they never thought they could do 280. And that just shows you that it can be done, but it has to be done safely, and it has to be done over a longer period of time.
Right. Barry, you got any questions about the scrum that you don't understand other than the scrum?
Well, yeah, there is that. No, nothing really. I mean, I was going to ask a broadly similar question along the lines of what's more important, technique or pure determination and grit, but we pretty much covered that, I think.
Well, yeah,
I would just add to that. Sorry, I would just add to that on top of your technical and your strength and everything that you want to put little details into, I would say mentality is one of the biggest key factors in being dominant in the scrum. If you can flick that switch where you can get in front of a scrum, engage, when that ball comes in, turn into a monster or a different animal, to wanting to go forward and that's what I think some of the props lack a lot of. And if you've got that determination, that mentality, and you can teach that yourself, I mean, if you look at the difference between, let's say, for example, I always say when Mike Tyson fought, he was just, the willingness for him to just knock someone out and to go for it was just that is what you need in the scrum for a 2-3 seconds. And he's a good example of it.
What was it? The famous Mike Tyson quote: "Everybody's got a plan until you punch them on the nose," isn't it? And I think that sometimes happens in the scrum. And against Sale, I think that perhaps happened that we probably went in with a plan. Sale presented a picture to the referee that I said on the time, another day, another ref. I felt Sale were getting a shove on early in every scrum and got away with it. But if that's what the referee's seeing and that's what the referee wants to see, then, your plan goes out the window if you can't cope with that. So the last question to you is, Barry, one player we see an awful lot of talking to the referee at scrum time is Jamie George, and he's forever throwing out little snippets. So what does that vocal player in that scrum say to the referee in those situations? Is he just looking for clarification? Is he asking for help in improving the position?
No, I'm all for that. I think having that clear communication and not wasting time is good for you to have that with a ref. I constantly had a chat with the ref on the run. I would break out of a scrum and he's running past me, and I would say, "Were you happy with that, ref?" And he'd just give me the thumbs up. And you just constantly have that communication, because when it's when it's 20 all and you're playing in a Premier Cup final or whatever, and there's a scrum in front of the sticks, I'm not saying you want to cloud his judgment and give you the benefit of the doubt, but if you want to make sure that throughout that whole time you are doing what he's asking, then surely you're going to have a better relationship with him. And just asking for clarity around it as well, and subtly. And this is the art. This is another part of the dark arts, where Jamie George is probably pretty good, and some other hookers. You subtly ask a question, but you're also telling the ref. So I think, look, I'm just going to say this out loud. People that moan about the scrum should sit up and think to themselves. You've got 8 of the biggest blokes on the pitch who are so strong they can probably enter world strongman. They are having a tussle with each other at 18 to 20 stone with 2,000 newtons going through their spine to scrum over a ball and be tactically. And they do cheat and they do things that's going to benefit them. But it's the game within the game. Start enjoying the scrum and look for subtle things that you might be interested in and understand. And look who's got brute power and look who's got now some technique, and enjoy that part of the game more. Then you might enjoy rugby more, because people, so many commentators going, "Oh, we need to get rid of the scrum, this, that, and the other." Well, go watch rugby league. Or we need to get rid of the scrum because it's eating up too much time. Now they stop the time. They got a stop clock for 30 seconds. If you actually count all the scrum time in a game, it's not as much as you actually think, unless it's howling down with the rain and there's a lot of knock-ons. That's different. But look at the World Cup. I thought the scrums was a good contest, something that you should actually think. These guys have given their whole life to train harder than anyone in the world, take more pressure through their spine. They go through 2 car crashes a week to entertain you on the pitch. Why don't you just start enjoying that part of the game as well, and then you will enjoy rugby more? Because you do not understand how hard these front rowers and second rowers have to train to put on a show on the weekend. And it doesn't always go smooth, but sometimes you dominate, sometimes you get dominated, but it's part of the game. And I think that's what makes it beautiful.
Indeed. Well, I mean, I mentioned that I played back row in my career and played number 8 an awful lot. And in the days when you had lots of pushover scrums and tries scored from pushover scrums, and I always used to say every try I scored was a front 5 try, and gave it to them. And the other point I was going to make is I think prop forward is the most unusual position in world sport. Any sport in the world, rugby union prop is the only position where you can actually be penalised for being better than your opposition.
Yeah. And these, I mean, there's not a lot of things going for props, to be honest. They're short, squat, fat, mostly beat up, ugly men, get paid pretty well. They always have the most beautiful wives, funnily enough. But give them some credit. Give them some credit that they're running around a pitch for 80 minutes to entertain you. And sometimes they get a line break and they score under the sticks, and that's great. But appreciate, because when I was a player, I remember we played against Leicester Tigers in 2016, and we had 3 penalty tries in the scrum. Did I get man of the match? No, I didn't. Maro Itoju got it. So thanks, Maro. Who did all that work? I scored 3 tries that day, didn't get mentioned once. So give him some credit, because these guys work hard in the gym, on the pitch, and everywhere else to put on a show for you.
Barry, did you want to add anything there?
Yeah, I was just off to add to edit the Wikipedia entry for Para, to add in those 15 points that he scored against Leicester in that particular game, and never got the credit for. But the only thing I would say about scrums is, and the thing that drives me mad about them, and as I only ever scrummed as a kid, unfortunately, because I didn't really play the game to any great level, is I just wish they'd go back to putting the ball in the flipping middle, and we actually had a proper contest, not with it being fed in somewhere near the back row.
Oh, look, I think they feed it nowadays, and I think that's to speed up the game. You look at international level, you barely see a foot, and the nines is got it down to a T now to feed it. Sometimes it speeds the game up. Yes, you want it down the middle, you want a proper pushing contest. I do a lot of presentations online around the world, and I always talk about the evolution of the scrum. Go back to 2007, 2012, and 2000 and maybe. Let's go way back, 1975 up to 2012. Go and have a look at the scrum. Then you will see how good the scrum looks now, because then it was an utter mess. So that, and safety wise, a lot of broken necks and injuries back in the day. So it's definitely safer for the better now. But look, it's going to change slowly, and we're just going to have to deal with it until further notice.
Well, Para, I think at this point we can say, let's bring this to an end, because I mean, it's been a fascinating discussion, not only about the scrum, but also your career. Just wanted to say on behalf of the Fezcast, we do an award where we name players who are what we call club cult heroes, and the likes of Chris Chesney and Jamie George has been nominated, and it's the players who we feel perhaps didn't get, well, not say the recognition, because you are recognised by us, but, you know, around the world of rugby, you typify what it is to be a Saracen, but also typify what it is to be a rugby union player. And we thank you for joining us in slightly difficult times for you out there in Australia, and, you know, whatever. But, you know, don't ever be a stranger to Saracens. There's a lot of affection for you at the club. Will remain so, even despite you working with Leicester Tigers. But yeah, no, thank you for joining us on the Fezcast.
Thank you very much, and I really appreciate it. I still have an eye on Saracen scores all the time, as well as other clubs that I've been at. But yeah, last thing from me, I think out soon in the next sort of few months, I'll be publishing some of my my dark arts knowledge and the holy grail of scrums, you know, either in an ebook or online, etc. So anyone who needs further information, I've already done some next seminars and stuff. Anyone who's interested, get in touch with me, and I'll be happy to help.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Para, for that. And we'll finish the interview there. Say a happy new year to you. All the best for the future. And we'll look forward to seeing it. Hopefully at some point you'll be over in England, and we'll see you at the Stonex maybe.
Thank you very much. Next time I come, I'll come and visit you guys. Listen, all the best. Happy New Year to all the friends and family and fans out there, and to the Saracens clan. So thank you very much for your time.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Para.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back to our last part, following on there from Petrus du Plessis. What a wonderful interview that was. And as you said earlier on, Matt, I mean, the bloke's an absolute mine of knowledge about scrummaging, and also about how to get fit for scrummaging. And indeed, he made a very impassioned plea for, you know, respecting what happens in the scrums and actually, you know, enjoy what goes on. And sometimes, you know, we forget that when we moan about it, don't we, Matt?
We do, yeah. Everyone tends to complain that scrums take too long to set up and too long to get going, and they don't add anything to the game. I mean, you got to step back and take a look at, you know, there's 8 massive blokes against 8 massive blokes, and when they're all pushing at each other in a straight line and they stay up and it's clean, it's a miracle, really. The amount of skill that goes into that, and particularly in the front row as well, it's a dangerous thing to be doing if you're not doing it properly. I know nothing about scrummaging, and I'm more than happy to sit here and admit that. But I do look at it and go, Jesus, this is we need to do something with this part of the game to make it more of a, not more of a spectacle, but I think it needs to be made a very important part of the game rather than just a machine for restarting or getting penalties, really. And I don't really know how you go about doing that, but. Yeah, like I say, it's a massive, massive skill, and I think it's underappreciated.
Indeed. And Barry, have you updated Para's Wikipedia yet to include those 3 tries he's claiming?
No, I haven't, but I probably should, because he deserves every point that he can cobble together, because he's an absolute gentleman and a scholar, and fascinating to listen to when he talks about the dark arts. And we look forward to his ebook, I think he said, wasn't it? That's going to be coming out soon about it. I will read that with interest, and I would suggest that our listeners do too. Indeed, absolutely. And when Petrus lets us know that coming out, we'll put the links up for that. Right, let's have a quick look forward to next weekend. Tigers away. It's going to be a hard game. And looking at the league, things are becoming very, very congested, 6 upwards, aren't they? Northampton are on top this morning with 34 points, played 10. Exeter Chiefs, 33 points, played 10. South Sharks played 10, 32 points. Bath played 9, 32 points. Saracens played 10, 31 points. Harlequins played 10, 31 points. Bristol played 10, 21. Leicester 9, 20. So Leicester at Bath today. That'll be interesting. Leicester really need to win that game, don't they, to retain any chance of getting in. And then, if they beat us, they're right back in it. But I think other than them, Bristol, Gloucester, Falcons are just playing for pride at the moment, aren't they?
I reckon so. I'm going to have to eat my words a little bit, because Leicester Bath is going on a few hours after we're recording this, but Bath have rotated their team a fair bit, and they don't look to be, well, it'd be an absolute masterstroke if they come away from Leicester with a win, and fair enough if they do. But yeah, I'd say that puts Leicester closer to the chasing pack. And then it'll probably be all guns blazing against us as well. And you never know, it might, it could be a top 7 within a few points of each other, well into the second half of the season. So it's exciting in that respect. I can see there's a lot of frustration from fans that we're not the Saracens of last season. And to be honest, I think we are. There was a lot of games last year that we won with the last kick of the game, by this point of the season last year, we could have lost 4 or 5 and be in exactly the same position that we're in now. So I really don't see it being too much different to last year. We've just not quite had the luck that we had last year. And for everyone to be so tight, 6 or 7 teams chasing for the top 4 halfway through the season, you really can't argue with it. It is what we do, what we want. And the attendances this weekend showed that there is actually something about English rugby. It's not all negative. Sellouts at, I think, 3 grounds. Harlequins had their big day out at Twickenham with 75,000. Bristol had a big attendance, 25,000, I think it was there. It's going pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I mean, the product is great, isn't it, Barry?
Absolutely. I wonder if that, as tight as it is, I wonder if that's what they were hoping for with a 10-team league, that it does become more competitive and there's more teams taking points off of each other. And I mean, just looking at it, we've lost to all the teams above us and beaten all the teams below us. So we're exactly where we should be in the league, in 5th position, as we called this.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I mean, I don't think it's healthy for us always to be top 1 or 2. And just, because it breeds a sense of entitlement that we do see on social media from some fans. Sometimes, you can't always win everything, because otherwise, one, it breeds arrogance, entitlement, whatever it may be at your club, but also other clubs are going to sit there and say, well, what's the point? And I suppose that's where you have this financial fair play kind of, sort of thing going on. That's the end product of it, is that you get a nice tight league. and that the team that wins have to work bloody hard to win.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the way it should be. I mean, there's always, we talk about rotation and we talk about the Bath side that's playing Tigers today. There's always going to be that rotation. There's always going to be games where you decide that actually it's not so bad to make 9, 10, 12 changes or whatever. But we want a competitive league. We don't always want to be sitting at the top of it. I mean, let's be honest with you, it's quite dull for us to watch as supporters as well. If we're just turning up and rolling teams over, it doesn't give you a great spectacle on a Saturday.
No, one of the most boring games I've ever watched at the StoneX was when we beat Worcester about 75-0. This wasn't worth paying the money for. You'd much rather your games against Northampton where we come back and win 42-40 or whatever the hell it was. It is not. You walk away from a game when you lose at home feeling a bit pants, but in the long run, it does make the season a lot more interesting, a lot more competitive, and people do get more involved in it as a result. So, yeah, we've got to take it, whatever comes.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest about it. Most of us old enough to remember going to watch Saracens at Vicarage Road and thinking, why on earth are we doing this? Because we know we're going to get a kicking. I always hark back to my granddad, who was born in 1907. He was a lifelong Essex cricket fan. Never saw them win any trophy until 1979 when they won the county championship and the B&H Cup, and then went on a decade and a half of winning every trophy in light. But he died the following year, so he only ever saw him win 2 trophies. And that's being a proper fan. Sometimes, we've earned the right over years and years of watching some pretty mediocre Saracens teams to have the right. But it's not a given right. It's one you have to work for, isn't it?
There's still well, not this season because there isn't any relegation, but there was always a moment between a few fans, particularly on a couple of the forums, when someone would post a new subject saying, right, we're safe from relegation again. And that continued even into our period of dominance. All right, we were sometimes safe in about November, but an awful lot of people do still, like you say, we remember the days when actually it was a battle against relegation, and thankfully most of the time we steered relatively clear of it, other than when it was forced upon us. But it's you have got to remember those days in order to for the title wins to mean more. And we've spoken about it with so many players that have been around a bit longer. I think the trophies that we won, they mean more because we lost a final before that, really. So.
Well, absolutely, I agree with you there. And as I say, I mean, I'm a West Ham fan as well, as I might have mentioned, and I look at West Ham in 6th place, 33 points on New Year's Eve. We're safe from relegation. That's the way I've looked at that all the way through, and always do. Sometimes that happens. We're not very good at, and we won't mention Brentford, of course, Barry, at the moment. But
yeah, thanks. We've Brentford have got even more injuries than Saracens have had.
Yeah, not good, is it? But yeah, look, thank you for your support in 2023. Happy New Year for 2024. Let's hope, despite what we've been saying there about it being a competitive league and everything, in May or June or July or whenever the finals played this year, we'll still be at Twickenham for the final. But, one of those things, isn't it? See how it goes. But thanks, Barry. Thanks, Matt. And thanks, everybody on the Fezcast and the listeners for joining us. And we'll say Happy New Year and see you next time.